The smug alien's mocking laughter rang through the auditorium as the human historian's evidence was dismissed and ridiculed. It took every ounce of Chris Perry's self-control not to charge the stage and teach the arrogant Jem'Hadar some respect. He gritted his teeth. Getting arrested for assaulting the keynote speaker would be a poor start to the conference. Chris glanced around the room, seeing a mixture of reactions from the diverse alien audience. Some looked amused, others bored, and a few even nodded along with the speaker's degrading remarks about humanity's primitive past. Chris was determined to prove them all wrong. His years of research pointed to an inescapable, if inconvenient, truth. Humans had not always been the backward savages the galaxy believed them to be. The archaeological record was clear. Advanced human ruins and artifacts predated the Jem'Hadar's earliest spacefaring tech by thousands of years. For Chris, this conference was meant to be his moment of triumph, a chance to redeem humanity's name on the galactic stage. He never expected to be publicly humiliated by Quasar, a renowned Jem'Hadar historian with a reputation for pompous disdain toward lesser species. As Quasar continued spouting his pseudo-historical nonsense to the enthralled audience, Chris seethed with barely contained rage. The Jem'Hadar's latest book claimed his species was solely responsible for uplifting and influencing other races after inventing interstellar travel. It was beyond arrogant. It was an outright lie. Quasar's so-called facts dismissed and rewrote the histories of dozens of species, not just humans. Someone had to stand up and challenge him. Heart-pounding, Chris rose from his chair and interrupted the keynote address. The auditorium fell silent, and he felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon him as he called out Quasar's falsehoods. He laid out the evidence piece by piece, citing artifact dates and locations that proved humans achieved space travel long before the Jem'Hadar. The audience murmured and gaped in astonishment. No one challenged Quasar so directly. Quasar was not used to being questioned, least of all by a human. Enraged and sputtering, he dismissed Chris's delusions of grandeur and fell back on old stereotypes, painting humans as warlike brutes. Chris saw red. Locking eyes with Quasar, he made the alien an offer he couldn't refuse, an expedition to uncharted space, to a set of mysterious coordinates uncovered in ancient human star maps. If Quasar was so certain of his views, he would jump at the chance to prove Chris wrong in front of the whole galaxy. The Jem'Hadar hesitated, mandibles twitching. If he declined, his reputation would be forever tarnished by the human who dared defy him. But if he accepted and succeeded in humiliating this upstart researcher, his fame would reach new heights. Quasar's beady eyes glittered with malice as he accepted the challenge. As the expedition crew assembled, the atmosphere crackled with tension. For Chris and his human colleagues, the stakes couldn't be higher. If they failed, humanity would be forever dismissed as a delusional species desperately clinging to a false history. But if they succeeded, it could rewrite galactic history and prove once and for all that humans were not always the primitive savages the Jem'Hadar believed them to be. As the ship blasted into uncharted space, Chris shivered, with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Their destination was a mystery, but one thing was certain: the truth that awaited them would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. As the expedition ship blasted off from the Jem'Hadar homeworld, the tension between Chris Perry and Quasar was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The human and Jem'Hadar crew members eyed each other warily as they went about their duties, mistrust and old rivalries simmering just beneath the surface. Chris was in the research lab, poring over the ancient star maps, when his second-in-command burst in. Dr. Marcus Reeves was a brilliant archaeologist, but the normally calm and collected man looked uncharacteristically agitated. "Chris, we've got a problem," Marcus said, his voice low and urgent. "I caught one of Quasar's officers, Commander Thakin, snooping around our communications array. He was trying to access our research files." Chris's eyes narrowed. He knew Quasar was up to something, but spying on them, that crossed a line. He stormed onto the bridge, where Quasar was lounging in the captain's chair like he owned the place. Care to explain why your man was caught red-handed hacking into our systems? Chris demanded, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. Quasar's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smirk among the Jem'Hadar. You're being paranoid, human. My crew is simply being vigilant. We can't afford any slip-ups on this mission. Chris opened his mouth to argue, but a sudden jolt rocked the ship, nearly knocking him off his feet. Alarms blared as the pilot shouted, "We've entered an asteroid field. Brace for impact." The ship shuddered and groaned as it was pelted by space rocks. Chris leaped into the co-pilot seat, his hands flying over the controls. He wove the ship through the treacherous field, narrowly avoiding collision after collision. Quasar watched in stunned silence as the humans' quick thinking and piloting skills saved them from certain destruction. As the ship emerged from the asteroid field unscathed, Chris turned to Quasar with a triumphant grin. The Jem'Hadar looked away, clearly reluctant to acknowledge the humans' competence. Back in the research lab, Chris and his team pored over the star maps, searching for any clue that might lead them to their destination faster. Suddenly, Marcus let out a shout of excitement. "Chris, look at this. There's a hidden wormhole just a few light years from our current position. If these maps are accurate, it could shave months off our journey." Quasar, who had been lurking in the doorway, scoffed. "A wormhole? In uncharted space? It's clearly a trap. We can't trust those primitive human artifacts." Chris rounded on him, his patience wearing thin. "Those primitive artifacts have gotten us this far. We're taking the wormhole." Quasar looked like he wanted to argue, but the commitment in Chris's eyes made him think better of it. "Fine," he spat. "But if this goes wrong, it's on your head, human." As the ship approached the wormhole, the crew held their breath. The swirling vortex seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, beckoning them forward. Chris gripped the controls, his heart pounding as he guided the ship into the heart of the anomaly. For a moment, everything went black. Then, with a flash of blinding light, they emerged on the other side and found themselves in a star system unlike any they had ever seen. A massive, ancient structure loomed before them, orbiting a dying star. Its alien architecture was both breathtaking and eerily familiar, a haunting echo of the artifacts Chris had uncovered on Earth. He felt a surge of vindication. This was it, the proof he had been searching for. But before they could approach the structure, a barrage of laser fire rocked the ship. An unknown alien vessel, jam-packed with weapons, dropped out of hyperspace, blocking their path. "Attention, intruders!" A harsh voice crackled over the comms. "This is our sovereign territory. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Chris opened a channel, keeping his voice steady. "This is a peaceful scientific expedition. We mean you no harm. Please, let us explain our mission." "We will not tolerate trespassers," the alien snarled. "Leave now, or face the consequences." Chris looked to Quasar, his eyes wide with desperation. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they couldn't leave, not when they were so close to the truth. "We need a plan," Chris said, his mind racing. "That star, it's unstable. If we could lure them closer, maybe trigger a solar flare." "A risky gambit," Quasar mused, "but it might just work. My crew and I will prepare to board their ship, disable their weapons from the inside." Chris nodded grimly. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. As he laid in a course for the roiling star, Quasar and his soldiers armed themselves for battle. Chris took a deep breath. Everything, their mission, the truth, their very lives, hung in the balance. Quasar's mandibles clicked with dedication as he led his elite Jem'Hadar squad onto the hostile alien vessel. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the metallic walls. The Jem'Hadar moved with practiced efficiency, their carapaces providing natural armor against the onslaught. "Push forward!" Quasar bellowed, his voice carrying over the din of battle. Two of his soldiers fell, their bodies crumpling to the deck. The remaining team pressed on using every scrap of cover. They reached a junction, and Quasar signaled for a split formation. Half the team laid down suppressing fire while the others advanced. On the expedition ship's bridge, Chris gripped the arms of his chair. Status on Quasar's team? They've breached the alien vessel's outer defenses, Marcus reported, eyes glued to the tactical display. But they're taking heavy losses. The ship rocked violently as the alien vessel's main weapon powered up. Warning klaxons blared. "Shields at critical," the tactical officer shouted. "One more hit and we're done for." Chris's heart pounded. Everything hinged on Quasar's success. Seconds ticked by like hours. Suddenly, the incoming fire ceased. Chris let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They did it. All power to engines now. The ship lurched as it accelerated towards the dying star. Chris felt sweat beating on his forehead as the temperature rose. Scorching plasma licked at the hull, bathing the bridge in an eerie red glow. "Radiation levels critical," Marcus warned, his voice strained. Chris's fingers flew over the controls. "Launching thermal charges, now!" A series of brilliant flashes erupted from the star's surface. The solar flare that followed dwarfed anything in recorded history. Chris watched in awe as the wave of charged particles slammed into the alien vessel. With the immediate threat neutralized, Chris wasted no time. "Set course for the construct. Full speed ahead." The ancient structure loomed before them, its alien architecture both awe-inspiring and unsettling. As they docked and boarded, Chris felt a chill run down his spine. The technology they encountered defied explanation. "Look at this," Marcus breathed, gesturing to a sprawling data center. "I've never seen anything like it." For days, they worked tirelessly to decipher the alien records. Chris barely slept, fueled by a mix of caffeine and sheer dedication. Quasar paced restlessly, his agitation growing with each passing hour. Finally, Marcus burst into the makeshift command center, his eyes wild with excitement. "Chris, you need to see this." The evidence was irrefutable. Holographic displays showed ancient humans interacting with the precursor race. Schematics detailed technology far beyond anything humanity possessed even now. "This changes everything," Chris said, his voice barely above a whisper. Quasar's reaction was explosive. "Lies!" he roared, smashing a fist into a nearby console. "This is human trickery!" Chris rounded on him, fury etched on his face. "Open your eyes, Quasar. Your arrogance is blinding you to the truth." "I will not stand for this," Quasar snarled, mandibles quivering with rage. "This construct and all its falsehoods must be destroyed." Chris stepped between Quasar and the databanks. "I won't let you erase our history," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Not when we've come this far." The two stood face to face, neither willing to back down. The fate of humanity's legacy hung in the balance. The air crackled with tension as Quasar's eyes darted wildly between Chris and the construct's central console. His mandibles twitched with barely contained fury. "You've ruined everything," Quasar snarled, lunging for the controls. Chris sprang into action, tackling the Gem Hadar mid-stride. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Quasar's exoskeleton gave him a natural advantage, and he easily threw Chris off. "Evacuate now!" Chris shouted to his crew as he scrambled to his feet. Quasar's fist connected with Chris's jaw, sending him reeling. The human tasted blood but refused to back down. He ducked under Quasar's next swing and drove his shoulder into the alien's midsection. They grappled furiously, neither willing to yield. Chris knew he couldn't match Quasar's raw strength, so he fought dirty. He jabbed his thumbs into the soft tissue beneath Quasar's mandibles, causing the Gem Hadar to howl in pain. Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Chris swept Quasar's legs out from under him. The alien hit the deck hard. Chris pounced, pinning Quasar's arms behind his back. "It's over," Chris panted. "Stand down." A commotion at the entrance made Chris's blood run cold. Commander Thakin burst in, flanked by a squad of heavily armed Gem Hadar warriors. Chris's security team lay unconscious in the corridor beyond. "Release him!" Thakin growled, leveling his disruptor at Chris's head. Chris slowly stood, hands raised. "Thakin, listen to me. What Quasar's trying to do will destroy everything we've worked for." "Silence, human!" Thakin spat. You will surrender control of this construct immediately, or I'll vaporize you where you stand. Chris took a deep breath. Think about what you're doing. This place, this knowledge, it belongs to all of us. Destroying it would be an unforgivable crime against history itself. Thakin's grip on his weapon wavered. Explain! This construct holds the key to understanding our shared past, Chris said. Not just humans, but Jem'Hadar too. We're all part of something greater. Don't let Quasar's wounded pride rob us of that. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of ancient machinery. Then, slowly, Thakin lowered his weapon. You speak with honor, Thakin said. We will not destroy this place, but Quasar is too dangerous to be left free. Chris nodded. Agreed. Under heavy guard, Quasar was escorted to a secure holding area. Chris breathed a sigh of relief, but knew the danger wasn't over. In the data vault, Chris and Dr. Reeves pored over the alien records. What they found shook them to their core. This can't be right, Reeves muttered, eyes wide. According to these files, the precursors didn't just give us technology. They created us. Chris stared at the holographic display, mind blown. We're their children, he whispered. Humanity was engineered to inherit the stars. Before they could fully process this earth-shattering revelation, the door burst open. Thakin rushed in, mandibles clicking in agitation. Quasar has escaped, he shouted. He's taken control of the main reactor. If we don't stop him, this entire structure will be destroyed. Chris's stomach dropped. We have to get to that reactor, he said. Now! As they raced through the alien corridors, Chris knew the real battle was just beginning. Everything they'd discovered, everything they'd fought for, hung in the balance, and only by working together could they hope to save it. Chris and Thakin sprinted through the twisting corridors, their footsteps echoing off the ancient walls. Dr. Reeves and the Jem'Hadar warriors followed close behind, weapons at the ready. The air grew thick with an acrid smell as they approached the reactor chamber. There, Chris shouted, pointing to a massive door ahead. They burst into the chamber and froze. Quasar stood at the reactor controls, his eyes wild and unfocused. The room pulsed with an eerie blue light as waves of radiation poured from the failing containment field. Quasar, stop this madness! Chris yelled over the deafening hum of the reactor. The Jem'Hadar historian whirled to face them, his mandibles clicking furiously. You've ruined everything, he screeched. Our supremacy, our destiny, all lies. Chris took a cautious step forward, hands raised. We can work through this together. Just shut down the reactor. Never, Quasar snarled. He smacked his fist on a nearby console, and a shimmering force field sprang to life around him and the controls. Thakin and his warriors opened fire, but their disruptor blasts dissipated harmlessly against the barrier. Chris turned to Dr. Reeves. We need to access the central computer core. It's our only chance to override his commands. They raced to a nearby terminal, fingers flying over the alien interface. Suddenly, the screen went dark. He's locked us out, Reeves exclaimed. Chris's mind raced. There had to be a way to reach Quasar, to make him see reason. Evacuate the others, he told Reeves. I'm going in. Before anyone could stop him, Chris squeezed through a narrow service hatch into the reactor chamber. The heat was oppressive, sweat instantly beading on his skin. Quasar, he called out. This is insanity. You're going to kill us all. The Jem'Hadar's eyes locked onto Chris, filled with a mixture of rage and despair. Better oblivion than the truth, he howled. In a blur of motion, Quasar hurled a metal rod. It struck Chris's temple with a sickening crack. He staggered, blood trickling down his face. Through blurred vision, he saw Quasar advancing, claws extended for a killing blow. Suddenly, the service hatch burst open. Thakin and his warriors poured in, weapons raised. Stand down! The commander roared. Quasar spun towards the new threat, giving Chris a moment to clear his head. The chamber erupted in chaos as disruptor fire tore through the air. Quasar's force field flickered and failed under the onslaught. With a final, anguished scream, The historian vanished in a blaze of energy. The reactor's warning klaxons grew more insistent. Chris stumbled to the controls, his fingers leaving bloody smears as he worked. "It's no use," he gasped. "We can't stop the overload. We need to evacuate now." They raced through the disintegrating structure, Chris coordinating the frantic exodus. A horrific scream pierced the air. Chris turned to see Dr. Reeves on the ground, his body racked with convulsions as radiation from a nearby breach tore through him. "Chris!" Reeves gasped. "Get out! Leave me!" Chris's heart seized. There was no time for proper medical care, no way to safely transport his friend. With trembling hands, he activated a nearby stasis pod. "I'll come back for you," he promised, sealing Reeves inside. The surviving crew piled into their battered ship. As they pulled away, Chris watched through tear-filled eyes as the construct vanished in a blinding explosion. The truth of humanity's origins, the incredible legacy they had uncovered, all of it gone in an instant. In the somber quiet of the bridge, Chris gazed out at the star-filled void. The weight of their discoveries and the terrible price paid to obtain them pressed down on him. What other earth-shattering revelations awaited them in the vast, uncharted reaches of space?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.